Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for sticking with us. We're going to give everybody just another few moments to get in. And as we are, making sure everyone comes in, the compact is up as we started to, reference it earlier. You can take this few moments to just kind of look over it. There is a link in the chat if you would like to pull these documents up on a separate page, making it easier for you to review. And I'd like to welcome Joe Carbone from the workplace. He's going to lead our discussion today. And we have Kathy Awad from the Northwest Regional Workforce Board, who's going to co-facilitate. And I'm just going to interject on occasion and participate in the discussion. And you're welcome to use the chat as well. All of this stuff is going to be documented for us.
I think the way that, by the way, am I muffled again or could you hear?
Nope, you're good, Joe.
I'm okay.
Yes.
Kathy and I kind of agreed that she was going to start, so I'm going to pass to Kathy first, and then she'll give it back to me.
Sure, thank you. So first of all, welcome everyone to this sector breakout. Thank you, Kelly, for inviting Joe and I to participate today. As you know, the opportunity to take a deeper dive into some of the work that we're doing through the multiple of programs that the workforce boards and some of our community-based organizations are running is extremely important when we talk about the different industry sectors. Personally, the work that we are doing here in the Northwest around our regional sector partnerships is something that we have seen the greatest return on what is at this point a very small investment. So we're very excited about the opportunity to take those partnerships to an even greater level using the Good Job Challenge funding. And we continue to really appreciate the involvement of our industry sector partners. And I think that's key to continuing to develop the sector training, is that involvement of the industry sectors across multiple sectors, not just those that are in an RSP formally. Again, appreciating the opportunity to do that. There's a lot of different entities and agencies that are on the call from different partners, both public and private, that are required for this to be very helpful. So that's my little opening salve, and I'll throw it back to Joe for his.
Okay, Kathy, thank you. And thank you, Kelly. And let me say that, this is quite a meeting when you think about it and you analyze the accomplishments. I mean, they're extraordinary. These numbers that we're looking at of achievement are things we ought to be very proud of, and it kind of justifies all the work that we have put into this process. It's a very different system in Connecticut today than we ever had before. And we are seeing great progress. I'm going to try to take it a little bit higher for a moment and try to stimulate some discussion based on it. You just heard the governor talk about the importance of the continuation of a robust economy. I mean, that's the centerpiece of our work. All of the great things we have heard about reaching into folks that have never enjoyed the benefits of a great economy that Connecticut has had for a whole variety of reasons. We're giving a lot of our time to helping people connect with the good economy of our region. But you got to preserve that economy. It just will not fall equally to other groups unless the economy is as robust in the future as it is today. I mean, we have a situation right now where we've got the lowest unemployment rate that I can ever recall in our state. Imagine a situation where you can have 0% unemployment and still have jobs that are not filled. We've got some structural problems that I believe need to be addressed as well. Because if they're not, if they begin to weaken the state's economy, such as, let me just put it on the table. We've got a shortage of workers. We're going into a period that will be a protracted period of worker shortage. How does that affect business? It affects it, greatly. It means how much time it's going to take to find replacement workers. It means how good those workers are going to be. When industries need to make decisions for whether or not they're going to expand, they're going to move to a state, or reasons why they should remain, the size of your labor force, which by definition is the sum of those who are employed and those who are honestly looking for work. It's a very important index, probably more important than the vast majority of other indexes that we use. That number in Connecticut has been really diminishing now for some time. So that every month that goes by, when that number is smaller, it tightens the employment market, making it more difficult for employers to find replacement workers. And it's often used as a signal. So overcoming that, doing our best to really preserve a great economy and set some right circumstances here for businesses in the future, issues like the fact that we're the sixth oldest state in the country. We've got to do things to keep older workers from leaving the workforce. This is like a period of maybe the next 10 years that we're going to go through this. And there are things we need to do. The investment in incumbent workers so that the workers, the people we already have that are here, we make them as smart as we can, as productive as we can. Obviously doing things to retain more of our kids when they graduate from college, to stay here and to keep that talent here. We heard a great deal about different ways that we're going to connect people to upward mobility and to a career. And I think the record to date is one that we should all be proud of. But at that 30,000 foot level, we've got some serious challenges that are looking us right in the face. So I think that, among other things, we need to support the incumbent workers through their employers. And we need to make it possible for older workers to remain on the job under their circumstances. And in terms of bringing more people into the workforce, I mean, I go back to remote works. I mean, I think that is the best way in which we can bring more people who live in Connecticut already into our labor force. And I think we're going to see a lot of growth in that area in the months to come. Had a bad sign about it yesterday from Martha Stewart, who, really declared it as one of the worst things that can happen. Well, I don't agree. But I think taking our business to a higher level, not forfeiting or not sacrificing any of the wonderful, meaningful things that we're doing to engage people in this economy that might otherwise have difficulty in doing so. That's noble and that must be done. But at the same token, I think we've got to deal with that elephant in the room here, which is those issues that affect whether or not we're able to continue to grow the economy.
Thanks, Joe, so much for framing that all out for us in a really robust way. So as we start, thinking about the evolution of the strategic plan, how do we ensure that we're not only addressing today's needs, but having and building a system that stays in alignment and continues those conversations so that we can ensure that we're keeping up with the rapid changes within our economy. Last week, I sat on a panel talking about the role of AI and how is artificial intelligence and things like ChatGPT going to affect our future workforce. And so when we think about sector-based training, we're really thinking about, how do we upskill and reskill those who have been traditionally left behind, didn't get those skills, either coming out of high school, skills and credentials coming out of high school, and are just, trying to get those survival jobs that Adrian talks about to support their families, which don't typically give them everything they need to be in family sustaining career ladders that they can grow to their full potential. So we have put a few things together for your reaction. So Billy or Jonathan, if you could put up our second slide. And these are just some of those things that when we think about sector-based training, right, we have our WIOA workforce system, which provides about $32 to $34 million annually into the Connecticut workforce system, which flows through the Department of Labor and to the workforce boards. We have additional state infused money, such as Career Connect and the Good Jobs Challenge. How do we kind of utilize some of these resources and some of the things that we've built to grow, scale, and sustain the ability to keep up with the changing needs of our industry sectors? So we'd love to kind of open this up for your conversation. There's a few, if you want to change the slide, these are just a few suggested, discussion topics that we can start talking with.
This is Sharon Denson from Disability in Connecticut. I represent employers in the state of Connecticut. Although it doesn't look like that from the name of my organization, we're a group of employers who are committed to hiring people with disabilities and have put together some really great best practices for doing just that. I just want to thank you, Kelly, and the governor for bringing employers into this committee. It is just amazing to see that. And over the years in Connecticut, I've seen workforce committees without employers, which kind of made me scratch my head because why are they there? Not that there's anything wrong with the commissioners of state agencies. They're very nice people, but they're not employers. So I think that one of the best ways to keeping up with what's going on and the needs of employers in the state is really to ask the employers. And I think it's congratulations to you and the governor for finally doing that. And that is really important because employers have their own strategic plan for what they're doing and the people that the kind of workforce that they're going to need now and in the future. And so they're probably the most reliable, down-to-earth place to find, or really practical place to find what the workforce needs are going to be in the future. And in addition to which, how do we attract more employers to the state? Now, and we can do this, and I think without having employers involved, it is really difficult to do anything else on the plan, and including helping underserved groups, people with disabilities, people of color, women, without this. And once we hear what employers need and the kind of, we can offer that training. The other challenge that I see is in our school systems, and this relates to people with disabilities and probably also to minorities in terms of educators' expectations for those groups and how they're trained within the school system. This is oh my gosh, I have a master's degree in education, so I come from a teaching background, although I never actually taught. This is a challenge that's long-term. And when you have transition coordinators training young people with disabilities on how to apply for benefits instead of how to apply for jobs, that is something. I see somebody shaking their head. Yes, yeah, and this is an issue, and I don't even know. I don't know how to begin solving that. Somebody has some ideas, but I think this also is the same thing at an inner city high school in terms of expectations and how young people in those schools are trained, and et cetera, et cetera. I've had, I know some really great transition coordinators. I've seen some that are, take my breath away with horror. And, I think they're all very well-meaning. So I don't think there's any bad intentions there. But I did find out that there is no training for transition coordinators, no degree, no education qualifications at all. And that was a concern to me. So that's a big social issue. But you have employers here in Connecticut who would love to reach out to more communities to fill the jobs. So, that's my experience with the people I work with.
Yeah, and I think that that's happening. I think there's an element here of self-interest. Job market is so tight out there that employers that perhaps in the past have never extended themselves to make the accommodations for people with disabilities, I believe are doing it now. And I think that number of employers that do it are going to be growing and growing and growing, the more difficulties that they have. And I think having the availability of remote works, where in fact they can even work from home and they can be productive, is going to help as well. I mean, I think that's the moment that we're in, and we've got to be sure to catch it.
Yeah. We are very fortunate. We have some great, my employers who are many of them in tech, they're very big employers in the state of Connecticut. They have a wonderful connection with the University of Connecticut in terms of hiring neurodiverse young people who are graduating from college. I'm working right now with one of those employees to create a pipeline to manufacturing jobs on the manufacturing floor, apprenticeships. So that's something we're working on right now. We create best practices and then roll them out to the rest of our members, and hopefully through this group, roll them out to the state of Connecticut too, in general. So and you're right, there is a self-interest there. Of course there is. So we should take advantage of the self-interest if we want to enjoy. And you're right, it's going to be long term. Prior to the pandemic, which accelerated all of these trends, we still have baby boomers retiring, and there are just not enough bodies in succeeding generations to take the place of those retirees. And that is, I don't know, Joe, if you agree with me, but that is the fact. So.
Well, I do agree with you completely, and that even makes this moment even riper to take full advantage of it.
Absolutely. So we have a few hands up too that would like to add to the discussion. I think Amos might be next, then Letitia, then Betty, then Alan.
Thank you, Kelly. I wanted to just point out that I think that grow, scale, and sustain are very important attributes of this whole project, but I think that it's a conversation that goes on between training sources and employers. And when you begin to look at sustainability issues and the issues that employees have once they're on the job, training doesn't help. Employers are making demands on workers that workers need additional services for. And I think that the whole scale of this thing misses out those organizations like ours who actually support families and support individuals when they're struggling at work and struggling at home, and trying to figure out how to solve issues that may or may not have something to do with the workplace, but may impact their ability to succeed in the workplace. And so from my perspective, looking at the people that we serve, and they typically are people who are trying to access the work training programs or workforce, and then have either failed at it or trying to figure out ways to solve personal issues that interfere with their ability to be better at work. And to the extent that the programs like ours get left out, which is really about wraparound support and helping people solve critical issues around budgeting, transportation, childcare, family dynamics, that's missing out of this. And so if you leave the context of this discussion, typically between the front end training, retraining, the assignment to a workplace or workforce, but not deal with the undergird of either health related issues that people need support in dealing with. And this is not necessarily assigning them to a medical home, because the theory around medical homes is that everybody's supposed to have a physician or a practice that knows them, knows their family. Well, that really doesn't exist for low income, moderately income people. They go to a clinic and clinic forces them to wait. It infringes on their ability to get to work. And if they have transportation issues, that complicates it even more. I think that part of what I've seen missing since I've been a part of the BIPOC subcommittee stuff is that this whole plan hasn't worked in agencies like mine, who in this case has just seen 13,288 families in the last 9 months, many of whom are in the workplace but struggle with their job and look to us for support and guidance, and help them figure out how to budget and plan so they can get to work and satisfy their. So to the extent that it's so, if we grow, scale, and sustain, then we need to think about what that sustainability look like. And that just doesn't mean just returning them back for new skills, reskilling. I think, Kelly, you said upskill and reskill. That's part of the challenge. But if you just deal with that, that's a different population than the ones that I'm talking about, who when they need reskilling, they fall out of the process. They don't stay in. And so if we're going to capture that segment of the population who might be available to the workforce, and Joe was just talking about how the shortage of workforce is a structural issue, there is also that population that stays at the bottom, who never gets seen, and we overlook as part of the planning we do around how we then add another organism that helps to support. These could be marginal workers because of some intellectual disabilities or lack of work history, and you're talking about life skills development, some of which you actually touch on during the training and preparation process, but you can't complete. So who are your partners that are helping to do that? And
Amos,
so,
I think you make some really very important points. The technical skills training is the easy piece of this, right? That's
Right.
kind of the frosting on the cake.
Right.
The real work is getting people ready with their life skills, their emotional intelligence, and their critical thinking skills, ability to kind of overcome some of those barriers, and know where their resources are. And I think that is a really important part of that. Our community-based organizations who are really doing great work here, and how we continue to align and scale, our efforts together, I think is going to be really important to ensuring that those people have the opportunity to fully participate. And I'm going to pass it over to Leticia. She, in her job training program through Career Connect, is doing an amazing job at really balancing those two things. Looking forward to your comments, Leticia.
Thank you. I'm trying hard, that's for sure. My staff is very excited about the work we're doing. One of the things that I would like to see progress is the discussions or interconnectedness between, like the governor came on about the state budget, but the industry I work in is energy, and we have a $26 million budget gap in the residential program. And that means that all of the contractors that are part of our network of employers, because we do have an employer network where we place people, unlike most folks. And so we're placing them directly in OJT positions where often they're hired at the place that they did their training, or at a place near there. We can't place people if the program's not operating, and the Inflation Reduction Act is about to hit the nation, and we're going to have a total crisis in our energy network when everybody shuts down this month. So people are already declining to hire, and people are laying off folks in the energy industry. And I feel like there's so often a disconnect between the work being done at other entities versus the work that's being done here at Career Connect. And it literally is a setup for failure. If you don't have places to place people, then you're just wasting money training people for jobs that aren't going to exist until 2024, later on in the year, because that's when the Inflation Reduction dollars will hit. So I just bring that forward because it is unfortunate. The other thing I wanted to say is that I think it's critical to make sure in the education component, I know that there's some fiscal training that has just been implemented. The governor signed a budget, or bill rather, that's going to allow that. That's super important. We're seeing in those purple sections that you showed on that graph that when we're working with adults, they have not experienced anyone in their community having a job, owning a house, having a car, having a driver's license. Graduating high school might even be a thing that hasn't happened in their community. So if they're not getting out of high school, it's really difficult for them to matriculate into another program, and they're struggling with the entrance exam. And then when we do find them employment, they're struggling with benefits cliffs in month 6, sometimes month 3, depending on what time of the year they're placed, because there's certain times of the year that the state requires paperwork to do your Section 8 or to do your SNAP benefits or to do your Husky. And we're seeing that those dates are the dates that they leave their job. Literally that same week they leave their job. So that's going to continue to be a barrier to keeping folks employed. And it's, again, I see it as a shame to utilize resources. I'm fiscally responsible as could be, to utilize resources to train a person for a job that we know that in 6 months, when they're going to lose their Section 8, that they're going to leave that job. So there has to be housing and insurance. I see housing and insurance being the two areas that are a major barrier to continued employment for people in those disparaged communities, because they can't stay in their housing and they can't maintain their insurance. So why would anybody give that up? like anybody give up those benefits to work every day and get up at a certain time and get in their car and drive somewhere and have to learn something and feel stressed out if they can just sit. So I know I probably sound terrible, but I just want to, say everybody, I grew up in that community and I 100% have a job now and I'm very grateful for it, but I wouldn't have gotten there if I didn't ever get a job. If I only knew to stay, like the woman that was speaking earlier about disabled students, I was a disabled student. Everybody wanted me to apply for disability. So where would I be now, right? So thank you so much for your comments earlier.
And thank you, Letitia, for bringing some of those barriers to light. I did not know about that. And so I learned something new every time we have these conversations. And it is really important work to overcome some of these really systemic issues that keep people in poverty. So thank you for your comments. We'll do Betty next, and then Alan, Michael, and Beth.
Thanks, Kelly. Betty Sugarman Weintraub, and I'm the manager of grant programs and philanthropic outreach with CHIFA, the Connecticut Health and Educational Facilities Authority. So the things that popped to mind for me as we have this conversation is that obviously we're very thrilled that we're at like about 3.5% unemployment, and I know in the vernacular, it's considered kind of full employment, but what we know is that that 3.5% population is made up primarily of folks that are disconnected from the workforce and that continue to be disconnected from the workforce, primarily Black and brown men. And we want to really kind of call out what we're talking about, that this pre-pandemic is the same 3.5% that we were at, and the same group that we're talking about that needs the additional supports, the wraparound supports in order to succeed. The basic skills deficiencies is an area that continues to be an issue. And also we know that folks that don't walk into the American Job Centers or do walk into the American Job Centers and are told, okay, go over and start at the computer over there, that there's a disconnect between a welcoming atmosphere at the American Job Centers and the folks that we want to get employed, that 3.5%, and we know what they look like, and we want to call it right out here. So as far as making sure that we're going to have a welcoming atmosphere, this is something that has been brought up with the boards in the past, is that everybody that walks into an American Job Center is seen as a success story. And is seen, and this is a sea change in how we think of AJCs. Okay, we think of them as, okay, they have goals. We have goals to reach, and we have to get people into jobs. But what we really want is to get them into life-sustaining wage jobs. Okay, that are going to be that the benefit cliff is not going to be the issue, okay, because they're making enough money for it to not have to drop off after 6 months because they're losing their benefits. I sit on the 2Gen advisory board. This comes up all the time. Okay, tomorrow we're having a session for the Connecticut Council for Philanthropy Workforce Affinity Group, and we're talking about opportunity youth, and we've got 40,000 opportunity youth in this state that are disconnected. So for what we're thinking about how to engage and how to ensure that that population is in fact the population that we're most focused on. And I think all the wraparound supports that you're talking about, Kelly, and I'm so glad to hear about the housing and so glad to hear about transportation and other the barriers to employment, okay, are the tools, are the work-related necessities. So the fact that that's going to be addressed through some funds is very key to ensuring that we're going to be able to move folks into those jobs that need to be filled, that we have existing in the state right now.
I think if I may just respond to that, and good points, by the way, Betty. I think we can see from the numbers today and the report that Kelly gave that they are conscious of this. I just want to use the example that we talked about earlier, which is the program that we're having right now in terms of the rental assistance program. That's never been done before. But what that does, it basically says, if you've got to work hard and you've got to earn money to pay your rent, we're going to take your rent off your book for a while so you can devote yourself full time to this. That's an extraordinary step, because what you just said is so correct. If people have to go to school, but yet they still have to support their family, and they've got to do a host of other things, going to school is going to be on the bottom of that list. So they will not take advantage of an opportunity, even if it's free, totally free, to do that. So I think step by step, what this office is doing, the Office of Workforce Strategy, is trying to eliminate these barriers. And many of these barriers, as you know, you and I have worked on this for a long time, many years, they have been around forever. And getting rid of them in the economy, what we have going on our side, and let's not forget this, on our side is the market, the free market, and the notion of self-interest. Those two elements are going to be forces here to be dealt with. You know, I think we're going to end up at some point where a lot of this responsibility for training is maybe leave government and go into the private sector. I mean, the way they sit and do their R&D work to be competitive, they're going to have to do it for these kinds of things. The quality of one's workforce. Maybe it's not just government's responsibility, but their responsibility too. Industries have to be a lot more responsive. But I think that you can look at that one element, which is the rental assistance program, and you can get a sense of the general direction of this office in terms of doing all that they can to eliminate barriers. Thank you, Betty.
Thank you so much, Joe and Betty. I'm just being mindful of time. We have 5 more minutes left, and we have 2 people who have had their hands up. So, Alan, if you could do about 2 minutes, and then we'll give Beth 2 minutes, and then we'll wrap up. You're on mute.
Mine is pretty quick. The most important thing that we need to do is to look at the design of these training programs, make sure that the language used to train individuals is universal, make sure that they're accessible, make sure that people can join in. I know that there are some jobs here that may not fit everybody in the disability community. And I know that there might be people in the disability community that might only be interested in working 20 to 25 hours a week. Well, maybe 20 hours now that we have a $15 minimum wage. But we really do need to make sure that everything is fully accessible and easy to use. And if I might go to the other part of education, we don't train individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities how to use public transportation. And in this world of trying to get from job to home and home to job, especially if you don't drive and you don't know how to use public transportation, you become SOL. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Alan. Appreciate it. I'm going to give Beth the last 3 minutes and bring it home for us.
Hi, I'm Beth Devine. I work exclusively with Connecticut manufacturers, and I think one of the challenges I've been working with them, a couple of manufacturers, on getting people with neurodiverse individuals into their workforce. And there's a real disconnect. Last 3 HR people I spoke with said, oh, yeah, we can't have those kind of people because we do aerospace, or we have expensive machines. So I think there's a real disconnect on what's intellectually disabled, what's neurodiverse, what's physically disabled. They don't really understand the differentiations between these. They also don't understand the jobs that the different groups can do. So I would love to work with anybody. I'm happy to, I speak to about 750 small manufacturers, 25 to 125 employees. It's kind of my niche. And so I would love to work with anybody. I don't know which organization, to talk about what we can do to provide materials that really spells it out for them, because they're so small that they're hiring, but they're too busy, doing the work to reach out to figure this stuff out. So we figure it out for them. So I'd really like to do that. And that neurodiverse end, from an educational standpoint, I had a child that graduated 4.65 GPA for a weighted GPA and neurodiverse, and the high school was pushing him towards a program that would teach him how to wash dishes. So I think from a comprehensive high school standpoint, We really need to figure out how these kids, there's a lot of them out there and they're incredibly gifted. I have a manufacturer, their last 2 hires, small company, were neurodiverse individuals. They said if they going forward, if they could only hire neurodiverse people, they would. So I think there's a real disconnect in what manufacturers understand and understand what jobs could be filled by the different types of people. And I would be more than happy to do anything volunteer to help any organization that wants some assistance getting in front of them and getting the right things to them to help place people.
Thank you, Beth and Alan, your comments and, really focusing this conversation on people with disabilities is really important to the work. And, Joe's done a lot of great work out of his workforce board and has some really amazing programs running. He'd be a great asset for all of you to connect with. We also have our regional sector partnerships across the state of Connecticut. This is a table that we've set for engaging our businesses at one table so that we're not chasing after them, trying to talk to them one at a time, but having a place where we can talk to all of them at one time. We are working on putting together a regional sector partnership convening sometime this fall, and would be welcomed suggestions from all of you on topics for discussion and places of connectivity for the workforce, for those business industry leaders to be able to understand all of these types of things that we're talking about here today in sector-based training. Joe, do you have any final comments before we get pushed back to the big room?
No, I think this has been interesting, and I think we can all take some satisfaction in the fact that folks are not being left out. I mean, there's plenty of activity that's going on to reach out to people, and despite your disability or whatever the obstacle might be or the barrier, there is some activity going on to try to erase it. So I leave here with great confidence today.